Hello, my darlings. I'm doing a new thing. I'm holding the book up like this when I start because then you can see it in the, when you look at the catalog of all my different stories. This is called Pete and Pickles, and this is from our darling friend Jonathan Cleet, who loaned these to us. Thank you, Jonathan. You're wonderful. Isn't he kind? Because these are a lot to loan. He trusts me. So Pete and Pickles. And then one more shout out I'd like to give is this book. Well, all the books I read are dedicated to all of you. But today I'd like to particularly say congratulations, Simone, for your new brother who just showed up yesterday. And his name is Zavi. So congratulations. You're going to be the best big sister in the whole world. It's so exciting. So it'll be Simone and Zavi, not Pete and Pickles. Okay, Pete and Pickles. Here we go. By Berkeley Breathed. Oh, these are so good. Okay. Philomel Books. Pete and Pickles. For Sophie and Milo. Oh, look, here's this great scene. There's their house, right there. Pete's house. Pete was a perfectly predictable pig. Would you like to say that with me? Pete was a perfectly predictable pig. He was also a perfectly practical pig, and a perfectly uncomplicated pig. He was a perfectly practical pig and a perfectly uncomplicated pig. And there he is, being uncomplicated. And here he is, doing work in the garden. And you can kind of see his wife had died, and her name is Paprika. So he's out there vacuuming her burial plot, because he loves her and tends to her, even though she's passed. Paprika. Being all those perfect things, Pete might have run for the hills if he had known what was coming that night. Here he is, at home at night, and then something happens. The storm arrived first. Pete cut the evening's fun off early and went to bed to get the nightmare out of the way. He hated storms. The same terrifying watery nightmare all pigs dream during stormy nights. For pigs are known to do only one thing well in water, and that's drown. So here he is having this awful dream. He doesn't like water. He doesn't like rain. He's having this awful dream. He wants to get over it. And that is exactly what Pete dreamt he was doing when a sudden sound woke him. So here's his dream. He dreams he's drowning in the huge turbulent sea when a sound woke him. The window was open. Pete pulled the lamp switch. Nothing happened. He had an odd feeling. Pigs are very smart this way. That something was a little wrong. And here's what it is. It's wrong. An elephant is trying to seem like he's just a lamp. It's hiding there. And there's little Pete. Little wrong. He's looking around. Oh, and look at the muddy footprints from the elephant. Pete was suddenly hugged really, by a wet nose at the other end of which was a wet elephant. The beast whispered, "Shh," and said nothing else, but her eyes spoke clearly. "Help me." Then a knock at the door. A clown was at the door and asked Pete if he'd seen any sign of an escaped elephant named Pickles. "There, under the couch. Look carefully," Pete said. There he is under the couch. There's the clown. There he is giving him up. Look carefully. As the circus man led the sad, slumping elephant away, Pete was startled when she looked back at him and smiled. The next morning, Pete was disinfecting his house, cleaning up all the elephant things, when he noticed his midnight visitor had left behind a gift. Dandelions. Look at the dandelions left in the lampshade. Ridiculous, thought Pete as he scrubbed. That afternoon, Pete took his usual short stroll. He looked down at the evening mist rolling in and saw a circus tent. He looked at the dandelion. He was holding it. Ridiculous, he muttered. Today, however, Pete would take a longer walk. There he is, and there he sees the circus tent down below. He soon found himself amidst the circus tents. Is it hard to say? Around the circus tents. Watching a long nose plucking every dandelion within reach. So there he is, and there's the long nose plucking all the dandelions. And he's right there at the circus. Pete knew that nose. And it knew him. It plucked Pete's hat and disappeared. Seconds before Pete called the police, his hat was pushed back out. Improved. You want to see what it looks like? So there he is. He plucked his hat, and then he gave it back all festooned with dandelions. So he didn't have a chance to call the police yet. Thank goodness. So Pete peeked in. Look how sad the elephant is. There's Pete looking at the elephant. Pete looked in to see Pickles sitting in a very dark corner of a very dark tent, wearing a very locked chain. Pete suddenly, unexplainably, found himself reaching for the key. And there was the key right there, and he reached for it. Didn't like seeing the elephant so sad. Now, free and outside, Pickles dove to hide while a panicked Pete whispered, "Tea was on my schedule today, not elephants." Because he's very practical. Being a practical pig, however, he knew they needed a disguise. Something, anything. Pete thought fast. It worked too well. A policeman suggested dinner. And here's what they thought. Took the cotton candy, made a head, like hair, took the tent, or a tarp, and made a coat, and what else? There was something else cool. Anyway, and the policeman was taken with it. Please go to dinner with me. Okay. They reached Pete's house by midnight. A weary Pickles retired after making herself comfortable in a pair of Pete's favorite pajamas. Understand this. You have not heard snoring until you've had an elephant nap on your couch. Pete was a perfectly unpleased pig. Shall we say that again? Pete was a perfectly unpleased pig. Tomorrow, he thought, the big girl leaves. There he is, miserable down there. The elephant's snoring. Peter woke the next day to find Pickles doing a little morning Tai Chi, as if she were in China, which she certainly was not. On the other hand, Pete noted that his house guest had made a few changes to the grounds. This time, Pete did not say ridiculous. So look what she did on the gravesite of his beloved wife that had passed on. Dandelions, a whole thing, made everything look so nice. Oh, And look at her doing, the elephant doing Tai Chi. Aww. So he's like, it's kind of nice to have this elephant here. Later that morning, Pete experienced the goose-bumpily joy of a back scrubbing with his newspaper and coffee. So that's weird. He's reading his newspaper, having coffee, and the elephant scrubbing him. He also discovered the limits of his bathtub. Do you think that fits very well? Well, here's what happens. The bathtub gets stuck on the back of the elephant. Pickles showed Pete a magazine article about high diving. She pointed to both of them. Ridiculous, Pete said. Pigs and elephants sink like bricks. So he's looking at the National Geographic. He's like, you can't skydive. Pickles smiled. After lunch, they would swan dive off of Niagara Falls. And they did. Sort of. They went to a pond. On Tuesday, they sledded down the Matterhorn in Switzerland, sort of. Pete was learning that Pickles had lots of plans. And look at them going down the Matterhorn together. That'd be pretty cushy to have an elephant under you. On Sunday, your parents will love this picture. On Sunday, they went to Tahiti for brunch. Pickles, as always, shared her tropical refreshment with the natives. So look at Pickles giving all the natives some stuff. And then there's Pete enjoying his in there. After Paris, it was on to the lazy canals of Venice. Pete did not know any romantic Italian songs, which did not stop him from singing them. And there he is on the canals, that's the one we had on the cover, using Pickles as a boat. Pickles is holding the umbrella. Pickles sniffed a fragrant Venetian lily and shared it with Pete in a manner nicely suited for elephants and pigs. So they put their snouts together and share the smell. It was when Pete returned home one evening and found ballet tryouts in Moscow, soaring paracows over Tuscany, and house painters on his roof that his thoughts turned to his earlier life. A less complicated life, Pete thought. Look at all that going on. Oh, what fun. That elephant can fly and dance. Soon after, Pete discovered Pickles getting into things she shouldn't have been in, and he snapped. And here's what happened. She went to get into the clothing. They were Paprika's old clothes that were stored up, and it upset him so much. And he lost it. I am a predictable, practical, uncomplicated pig. Or I was before, he yelled. As a shocked Pickles fell back into the bathtub, the last words she remembered hearing were the worst. It's time you probably left. She didn't know not to get into the clothes. They looked so pretty on her. Something broke. A pipe gushed water in a spewing torrent. The house was filled while a panicky Pete screamed, Pickles! The map! The mop! Buckets, sponges, never mind! Head for high ground! Because she broke off the thing. He starts flooding the house and going up. Pete worried that the high ground would run out, and as a matter of fact, as they walk up, mopping, trying to get up to higher ground inside the house. Oh, wow. It did. And when all the snouts and snoots in the now flooded house were fully stretched to their furthest reach, only one had found the refuge of sweet air. So way up there, just his nose sticking out, is the pig's nose, and the house is filled with water. Scary. Pete clung tightly to the last open window. He looked back down into the face of one far too heavy to join him and noticed once again, as always, a smile. There, look, he looks back down, and the elephant is smiling at him, so cheerful. At that terrible moment, what occurred to Pete was not how his life had become so unpredictable, so unpractical, and so completely complicated with Pickles. No, what occurred to Pete was his life without her, the thought of it. That endless night would be the longest of all their great journeys, and when the fireman finally climbed to the window the next morning, he could not believe what he found. He found a very small pig breathing for a very large elephant all night, every hour, every minute, every breath shared. When they finally emptied the house, the fireman looked down in puzzlement at the exhausted pair of sleeping friends. They tried, but could not pull Pete from the mighty grasp of Pickles. And so here's what they did is the little pig would breathe from the fresh air and breathe it down into the elephant's nose. Every breath, all night long, every second, to save the elephant's life. And when they found them, they were all just wrapped up together, hugging still, just exhausted. The two slept all day, through the night, and on until morning. And when they awoke to pick blueberries on the dandelion moons of Pluto, Pete sang Italian songs. And they lived happily ever after. Pete and Pickles. Thank you, Berkeley Breathitt. Thank you, Jonathan Cleet. See you next time.